report. Good evening. Welcome to the March 26th meeting of the Aiken City Council. Of the place that just happens to be recently voted best small town in the South.
Dick, we just wanted to give you a welcome when you came in. So
Glad I can make it.
he's here.
We're going to have our invocation and our pledge at this time. I'm going to ask Mr. Richard Johnson to come up and give us our invocation, and it'll be followed by the pledge from Chief Baranko. Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Pray. Oh, merciful and gracious Heavenly Father, once again we come before thy throne of mercy. We come, Lord, giving thee thanks for another day's journey. Thank you, our Father, for all of the blessings that thou hast bestowed upon us. We ask you, Lord, if it is thy will that thou would continue to go with us, stand by us, lead us, guide us, and direct us, my Master, in the way that you would have us to go. We pray, Lord, that you would continue to bless our governing body, bless our city council members. Help them, our Father, to do those things that are pleasing and acceptable unto thee. We ask now, Lord, to bless the citizens of the city of Aiken. All these blessings we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, thy Son. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Chief, while we have you here, Southern Living wasn't the only place we got some good news on. I'd like to ask you if you don't mind just taking a moment and sharing a little bit about the good news we have with our national accreditation.
Thank you, Mayor. Council. This past Saturday in Frisco, Texas, your Department of Public Safety was awarded the Certificate of Advanced Meritorious Law Enforcement Accreditation. This was our 7th reaccreditation, and it's awarded through the National Organization of the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, or CALEA. And people ask me, well, what's CALEA? What does this commission do? 5 points that it makes pretty clear is greater accountability within our agency, reduced risk and liability exposure, stronger defense to civil lawsuits, staunch support from government officials such as yourself, and increased community advocacy. Our employees, our staff embodies that from day one that they come on board, and it's implemented throughout our day-to-day operations. So, thank you, Mayor. I just answer any questions if anybody has any.
Chief, I just want to say I don't think we could be prouder of an agency than we are of our public safety, and congratulations to you and all the men and women of the department for this honor.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Look to our city manager at this time. We also have some people, we're so proud of the Southern Living recognition, obviously, but I think there's some people here tonight who really deserve some credit for getting us to the point where we were considered for this, and I'd like to put our city manager, Stuart Biedenbaugh, at this time to make a few comments.
Mayor, thank you. Soon after the first of the year, we were notified with some very exciting news. I think this is some of the most significant news that we've gotten here at the city, I would argue, since we were named an All-America City in 1997. So over 20 years have passed, and it was something we had to keep quiet at the request of the publisher of Southern Living magazine, that Aiken, South Carolina was confirmed by Southern Living what we've already known for a long time, that we are the South's best small town. And I gotta say, I knew this was a big deal as a nominal reader of Southern Living magazine, but I must confess I was taken aback by just how overwhelmingly positive this news was received. And this has just brought us so much good, positive attention. I want to recognize some folks for their work in this. First, Jenny Berghart was our tourism director when the wheels started in motion for this, and Jenny became a mother last year, and she made the decision to be a stay-at-home mother and left her position as tourism coordinator, and in her place, Rebecca Waddell has stepped in ably for that job, and I think they and our other folks in our tourism, community affairs and tourism division, and frankly, a number of other city staff deserve some very strong credit for this, but ultimately this is something that the community works with. This is not the work of just city staff, but it's just collectively the community, and the beauty of Aiken is again recognized in such a positive way. And it's very hard to find these copies on the in the store. One thing I don't have a lot of regrets, but one thing I think I do regret is I didn't renew my household subscription to Southern Living because I couldn't put my hands on a copy. But Mayor, this is something that I salute staff for, but mostly the members of our community that made this possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said, Stuart. And to Rebecca, who's here, we thank you for all you've done. You want to say a few words?
Rebecca Waddell, the tourism supervisor. As Stuart said, this award was built on the work that Jenny Berghart put in before me. She could not make it tonight because I know she's at home with that beautiful little baby boy. But I also want to acknowledge and thank my two tourism coordinators, Sherry Clemens and Mary Rosbach, and our farmers market manager, Joe Patterson, for all of the hard work that they put in year-round to help get us to this point. So thank you, and as Stuart reinforced, thank you to the members of the community who voted on this award.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it. I'd like to go over the guidelines of our meeting tonight. It's going to be a good meeting in that we have some very positive legislation that we're considering, but I'd still like to share these with you. Our meetings are public forums in which many opinions are expressed and the business of the city must be conducted. As such, discipline, honorable, and professional decorum is paramount. Courteous and respectful communication is certainly expected. During public hearings, all questions and statements from the public shall be directed to the chair. If you wish to speak, raise your hand, and I will certainly recognize you. Please approach the podium and state your name and address. In order to allow an opportunity for everyone who wishes to address council, speakers should limit their comments to the subject being discussed. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to address an issue and may only address an issue once unless questions from council are given to the speaker. And we appreciate you in advance for following our guidelines. With that, I would like to recognize our Mayor Pro Tem for additions and deletions to the agenda. Ms. Diggs?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, are there any additions or deletions to our agenda? If there are none, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as is.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And before we go further, let me say Councilwoman Gregory would like to be with us. In fact, she was with us in a work session via phone because of some family medical issues. She's out of town with her mother, taking care of her family. But we certainly wish her mom the best, and look forward to Andrea being back with us very shortly. With that, the minutes were distributed to council for their review before the meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Okay, we have a motion. Second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor of the minutes as presented? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down the agenda to the section presentations. Under presentations, this is a request to proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month and placements of pinwheels at Newberry Fountain. And I think we have someone here to make a presentation tonight on this. Peggy Ford. Fantastic. Yeah, 4, Peggy.
Okay, we're big.
Here, you can hold that.
Welcome.
So, I'm Peggy Ford, and I represent Children's Place.
And Sharon Hagan, and I'm the chairman of the Child Advocacy Board.
I'm Carmen Landy, I'm the CEO at Helping Hands.
And I'm Janice Nix. I'm volunteer president and board member of Children's Place.
And every April, Child Abuse Prevention Month is designated across our country. And we're here tonight to ask that you designate April as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the city of Aiken. It's a problem in Aiken and a problem across South Carolina. A year ago, 17,622 children in our state were officially proclaimed as abused children. That cost our state over $1 billion a year. So we are requesting that we recognize great childhoods by placing the pinwheels around the fountain. Because we become a stronger community, the more children we can have great childhoods. And so we thank you. We want to put the pinwheels all around the fountain, following the Chamber of Commerce's.
First Friday.
First Friday means business. Okay. Gather for a picture. And Mayor, we ask that you read the proclamation at that time.
We absolutely will. Let's see. So we're looking at presenting it April 6th, I believe, right?
Yes.
Very good. I have it on my calendar, so.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to go in and read the proclamation for now so we can vote on this, and then we'll present it again at the fountain. If that's
all right. Sounds wonderful.
We appreciate what each one of these agencies represent to our city and the needs that you meet of our citizens. That means a lot. So at this time, I'm going to go in and read the proclamation. Thank you for your presentation. Proclamation reads the following: whereas children are vital to our communities and state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, and as well as being our most vulnerable asset. And whereas all children deserve to have safe, stable, nurturing homes and communities to foster their healthy growth and development in a great childhood. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future quality of life of our community. And whereas communities that provide parents and caregivers with the social support, knowledge of parenting and child development, and concrete resources they need to cope with the stress and nurture their children, ensure all children grow to their full potential. And whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships created among citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and business community. And whereas partners in prevention include businesses that employ our citizens, churches who support their congregation, and neighbors who prepare a meal for a neighbor, friend, or relative in need, as well as community leaders and partners that work in helping agencies across Aiken County. Now, therefore, I recognize the Mayor of the City of Aiken, South Carolina, I do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. So with that, is there a motion?
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? And of course, that's unanimous. And Peggy, we look forward to presenting this at the fountain on the 6th. So thank you very much for your work and your effort. Moving now to Section 2, Old Business on our agenda. Number 1 is approval of appointments and discussion of appointments to various city boards, commissions, and committees. And I'll look to comments from staff.
Mayor, thank you. We have 2 appointments for council consideration. Councilwoman Gregory has recommended the appointment of William Lynn to the Energy Environmental Committee for a term that would expire December 31st of 2019, and Councilman Gerardo has recommended the appointment of Katie Lipscomb to the Design Review Board for a term that would expire December 31, 2018. And also for council information, we received notification that Donald Moody is resigning from the Recreation Commission. So tonight, for council consideration, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 appointments: William Lynn to the Energy and Environmental Committee and Katie Lipscomb to the Design Review Board.
Okay, very good, thank you. Is there a motion for these nominations?
So moved.
We have a motion, a second?
Second.
We have a second. Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. And let's see, are either one of our nominees here tonight? That's right. Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
I was told in a conversation today from Ms. Gregory to make sure I said congratulations on her behalf. She's sorry she's not here for you, but we appreciate your service.
Is Katie here? She's not here, so I can tell all of you, she's just great. She's a designer. Anybody knows Katie knows she likes to tell her opinion on designs.
Well, I think you just told her because I'm sure she's watching at home online. So.
Congratulations, Katie.
Moving down old business. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Are there any other nominations to be considered at our next meeting?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I have two. For the accommodations tax, the reappointment of Angela Key, and for the Seniors Commission, the reappointment of Brenda Holman.
Very good. Any other nominations for consideration?
I'll have one next time to replace Donna Moody.
Okay. I appreciate that. Moving down old business to number 2. This is a second reading and a public hearing of an ordinance amending section 10-4 of the city code regarding dwellings unfit for human habitation, boarded structures, and property maintenance. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we've been working on this proposal for well over a year. We began by staff going to visit with Council Member Diggs at her office, she may recall, and we then had a work session last summer in August with so-called model jurisdictions, including Clemson, Greenville, Rock Hill, a former city attorney from Columbia, to provide us with some potential best practices and did a ride-around. We subsequently had a first reading of this ordinance October 30th of last year. So this has traveled a circuitous path compared to other ordinances, but council wanted us to, after first reading, take it back, involve as many stakeholders as possible on all sides. Council of Neighborhoods have spearheaded, helped with spearheading this, city staff, realtors, property owners, and so forth. We want to emphasize that this only deals with property maintenance. At the time of first reading, we also had an ordinance for rental registration, registration, which this does not address. That is still being reviewed and worked on. So this is only property maintenance. And we took the existing property maintenance ordinance, have worked on it, and also our city attorney, Gary Smith, has worked hard on this, but we've made a number of changes. Primarily, we've expanded definitions in the city code. We've added standards to determine the fitness of dwellings for human habitation. Also added a section for the funding mechanism and sort of the cost for staff to do this enforcement, as well as one of the big changes is addressing boarded up structures and allowing for remedies of that, and definition of a nuisance property. So tonight for council consideration is second reading of an ordinance to amend section 10-4 of the Aiken City Code regarding property maintenance.
Thank you very much. And I can tell by the stickers in the room, there's a lot of people here to support this particular legislation. We're going to open it up for public comment at this time. I'm going to ask representatives from Aiken, who I know we're a partner in this and work very, very hard on this, to come up first.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Stuart took care of the first 3 minutes of what I had to say. I'm just kidding. I do want to say thank you for inviting us to partner with you in this effort. It has been an effort and has been educational, I think, for everyone involved. I do have to say that City Attorney Gary Smith has been most accommodating. He has answered our questions. He has incorporated changes to make this ordinance as beneficial and fair as it can be to everyone involved.
And Mr. Yount, before you go any further, let everyone know, I think,
I was going to step aside and let Beth explain how we got to where we are, and then I have a few more comments.
well, if you would, just for the record, introduce your name and address.
My name is Gary Yount, and I live at 1162 Alderman Street.
Thank you.
In Crosland Park.
Thank you.
Beth Copenhaver.
Good evening, I'm Beth Copenhaver, and I live in Jim Lakes on Springwood Drive. Really quickly, because we were told right before this we needed to have our entire presentation, so please bear with me. The following, and you can tell that we've slightly changed the name of the section. It used to be dwellings unfit for human habitation. We have just added boarded structures and property maintenance. Our rationale, Aiken, the Aiken Council of Neighborhoods, our rationale for doing this ordinance revision is when properties are not maintained and fall into disrepair, residents are adversely affected, resulting in an overall lower quality of life, increased risk of crime and fire, and also reduced property values. Now, I'm not going to go over those dates because Mr. Biedenbach already went through them, but I want you to know too that the Aiken officers also traveled to Rock Hill ourselves, saw the miracle that they have done in their city by enforcing their nuisance ordinance law, much of which we have added. Now, the nuisance properties, a few of these properties in Aiken, we're going to show you. We have cut and cut and cut, and maybe I'm not going to get to show you all tonight, but I want to show you some of what we're talking about. And I'm not going to read them all. Forest Street, Jahasi Drive in Governor Aiken Park. You can see some are just improperly maintained, but you're also going to know in some of these on the avenue that they have debris, garbage, just things, tires in the yard, vehicle parts. Columbia Avenue, another one, and I'm sorry we could turn on the lights, but, and I'm going to go faster. Kershaw Street Northeast, tall grass, you can't see it carefully, overgrown, a vacant building, vines on the side. Palm Drive, Forest Heights, now that doesn't look too bad, but that's the back of the house. And the folks who live there, it's overgrown completely with everything. Ligon Avenue in Tool Hill, if you can see it closely, just overgrown completely, and it's vacant. Park Avenue, if you can see all the garbage, just garbage all over the front yard. In disrepair, I'm going to go faster. Aiken Estates, vacant. Tell me a hill. And if you can see the discarded refrigerator and the other things in the backyard, they're just scattered. Ridge Avenue, boarded up. Henry Street, Virginia Acres, boarded, that on the roof is a hole in the roof and the garage doors, and it's obviously a hopeless vacant. Glencairn, Rubber Bluff, again, junk. This one is not vacant, they just junk everywhere in the front yard. Woodland Way, this is vacant. You can't even get in the garage, and if you notice on the right, the deck's falling down. Colleton, if you go out that way, screen, again, disrepair, junk. Lawrence Street, that beautiful old house, falling down, weeds, grass. Sumter, same thing. This one, the neighbor told me, because I live in Jim Lakes, that he's been told by the realtor, older couple, they want to sell, the property value has gone down when they had it appraised $50,000 because that house was next to them. Lakeside Drive, if you can see in the garage. Rolling Wood and West Cliff, and here is another one, Rolling Wood Drive and West Cliff. Junk, if you can see it clearly. Kershaw Street, abandoned, boarded up. Same, that's the back of the house. Front, you couldn't tell that much, could you? Torrey Street, boarded up, back of the house. Abandoned, I hope. Towns Lake Drive, some of you recognize that, front porch falling off, dumpster in the front. back deck falling down. Alfred Street, Crossland Park, another one, Crossland Park, can you tell? I love the farmer's market, but these are all lots with just junk piled in front. Debris, Park Avenue. This is pretty common when people move out and they just leave junk all over the place. Colony Woods Apartments, an old mattress, garbage thrown around, empty lot, Union Street, trash, Marlboro, old tires, junk right next to that building. That's abandoned commercial building. And yes, these are commercial buildings, and we have a current ordinance 10-8 that deals with these kinds of abandoned already. Richland, that's right behind the farmer's market, and that's on Orangeburg. Are you getting my drift? Okay. Southern Living, I was so proud too to see that they said we are the best small town in the South, and they said this town is a picture postcard waiting to happen. I tell you what, I don't think I'd want those photographs on a picture postcard, not the ones you just saw. What we are proposing, and we're eight and a half, Stuart, it seems like a year, but it was 8.5 months, dealing on revising this. We've gotten great comments on what we needed to do. But there are two main things that this ordinance is stronger in. It's stronger in the approach to it, because right now, property owners can board their building and then it can be there for months or years, boarded and dilapidated. And the number of boarded structures has increased because of that. Crime and blight comes along with that, and believe me, property values go down. We all know that. And lastly, updated ordinance will require owners to repair the structures or bring that building down. Second way it's different, this revised ordinance, it's revised in a process. This will now set clear standards for the structures. If they're overgrown, if there's debris and trash, it sets clear steps for dealing with the properties, and it also sets penalties if you ignore the city's communications to do something with this. Gary, it's up. You're up.
As you, Mayor, know, and as the council I'm sure knows, Sam Erb is not here this evening. Sam is attending the Main Street Conference in Kansas City and has asked that I read this statement concerning the ordinance that's before you tonight. Mr. Erb wrote, "I support the revised ordinance, Section 10-4, and am asking the City Council to approve this revision this evening. I like that this revised ordinance puts teeth into the ordinance already in place. This revised ordinance will help Aiken reduce and/or eliminate dilapidated houses that aren't healthy for our residents or our city as a whole. I enjoy renovating homes and have a number of rental properties. I take pride in maintaining my properties, and yet some of the adjacent properties, especially in the historic district, are not maintained. It distresses me as a businessman that rules for property maintenance are not enforced across the board. What is good for one property owner should be good for another. Too many property owners are allowed to be negligent regarding upkeep. This consistency must stop. Even vacant properties can look good. As a rental property owner, I do not want to rent to a bad tenant. I have this question for the City Council members. Have you ever tried to rent your property if the adjacent property is run down and not maintained? I know that better tenants mean better looking neighborhoods, and the reverse is true too. Better looking neighborhoods then attract better tenants." Mr. Erb's comment regarding inconsistent enforcement is a comment that we heard over and over and over again during our conversations and email exchanges as we gathered input. If the consistent enforcement comes, and this is me speaking now, if this consistent enforcement comes as the result of a division that is operating with a lack of oversight and accountability, that situation must be addressed and corrected. If it comes, as I suspect it does, an understaffed and underfunded code enforcement division, then you, as the city council, must fund and properly staff this division, either through increased fees or, as unpopular as this idea may be, through increased taxes. In closing, let me share this from the book, The Seamless City, that was written by former St. Petersburg, Florida Mayor Rick Baker. In talking about building a seamless city, Baker pointed out that all parts of the city are not the same, and that will always be true. Some areas have large houses and big lots, while others have duplexes and apartments. But all parts of a seamless city should have certain things in common. They should be safe and clean, and should have the services, retail, and public infrastructure that adequately accommodates the people who live there. There are areas of Aiken that are neither clean nor completely safe, as they're dotted with dilapidated and decaying structures, as you could see from the photos in our presentation. Mr. Baker went on to say the creation of a seamless city requires an attitude that we are all in it together. It means that we do not pit one area against the other, but we work to advance the entire city by addressing the needs of all the parts. Mr. Mayor and Council, the time has come for a renewed and determined effort to advance Aiken by addressing the needs of all parts and people. I would suggest to you that a vote for passage of this ordinance, providing the necessary funding and staffing to the Code Enforcement Division, and a consistent enforcement effort with oversight and accountability, is one small step in the process of making Aiken the seamless city that we'd all like to see. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your comments and all your work since October on this also. I know this has been a lot of time, a lot of effort. Also, the realtors were involved, our staff. We really have tried, I think council has asked as many of the stakeholders to be involved in this process of this ordinance, and I know your leadership has really done a lot to it, so thank you. I suspect a lot of people are going to echo what they said. I don't usually do this, but I think just with the amount of stickers here, I'm going to say this. Everyone who came to say exactly what Beth and Gary said, would you mind standing up at this time? I thought that might be the case. Thank you. If there's anyone here who would like to speak on this issue with a different perspective, please feel free to open it, and we assure you we'll be courteous to you. Yes, sir. Thank you for being here tonight.
My name is Richard Wilson. I live 2 Woodwind Way in Aiken, and I live right across the street from that house that they showed you at Woodwind Way. You only saw the one side of the house, which is the garage. Had you a picture taken of the backyard, you would have seen trays from empty food trays, all types of debris laying all over the backyard. The porch has been rotted through. The son, when he was there, would change the oil on his car in the backyard. There were springs from his Jeep, fenders, and other parts of there. The debris along the garage door included ammunition, liquor bottles, and beer cans. The front of the house was overgrown with bushes and trees, grew up through the top and was taken off the siding of the house. Fascia dropped off the windows upstairs. The front window upstairs had been open for over 3 years, with the guy living there and his son that came and went. If you looked at the back underneath the house, the equipment for the house itself, the furnace, the air conditioning and what have you, rotted out, big tub filled with water with scum on top. A perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes and whatever. It's my guess that the guy, and I've lived at that house, in my house across the street for 25 years. That house has been that way for most of those years. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse. The front porch was falling apart, the railing completely. He's got a plastic chair with a cardboard box for the mail. I must give it to the man, but he had a handicap. He had lost his leg through disease. The only reason I got to see the house from the inside, his brother came up to clear it. The man had a doctor's appointment. His son was supposed to pick him up to take him to the appointment. Never came. The man had to call EMT, ergo public safety as well. Got over and looked in the house. You could not walk through the house because of the debris on the floor, good almost a foot high. The garage was completely packed. The kitchen was a total disaster. I talked to the bank's property inspector. He's sitting in his car outside. I asked what's going on. He said, I can't go inside. The stink is so bad with human stuff in the bathroom. I personally saw where the owner was sleeping in his in his dining room on the floor on a mattress that I haven't seen in some of the ruddiest places in the world I've ever been. This is across the street from us. Neighbors got to look at it. I've got to look at it. Our next door neighbor down there is Mr. Jameson, Chamber of Commerce. And we've been living with this for most of 25 years. It hasn't gotten any better, it's just gotten worse to the point. We really appreciate the city coming in and taking over and trying to get the thing squared away. At least the front now of the property is nice. The side has been cleaned up a good bit. But we really need, as a city, to take this over. And now that we're number one, I mean, my God, we really need to get our stuff together and move it along. I think all of us here really, really support it. And I can see by the number of people that were here. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Appreciate your comments. Carroll Campbell is someone who I've always admired, a former governor of South Carolina. He's passed away now. And he used to have a saying, you can point your finger at me, but you better not poke me in the nose with it. And I think when it comes to code enforcement, sometimes with our neighbors, and we've allowed it to go to a point where I think we all feel like we're getting poked a little bit. So, is there anyone who has any comments related to the ordinance different than what we've heard already? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Gallman, I'll get you after she speaks. Well, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
You all haven't seen me in a while.
I know. Happy New Year to you. I don't know if I've seen you.
To Mayor Osborne, the council members, Mr. Smith, Mr. Beatonboat. My name is Ann Dix. I reside at 314 Jehoshee Drive, Aiken, South Carolina. I am the current president of Governor Aiken Park Neighborhood Association, which is located in the southeast of Aiken behind Citizens Park. We are a neighborhood that's comprised of single home owners of apartments. We are also comprised of seniors, families with children, retirees, and working people. I stand before you to please ask you to vote yes to approve this 10.4 section of this ordinance. And one of the reasons that I had, and I didn't know, and the thing I said is that the city of Aiken, which has been an all-American city, is now voted the best city, small town in the Southeast, is that we must continue to improve and enforce the ordinance that make livability, safety, and quality of life in Aiken a fact for every neighborhood in this city.
Thank you, Ms. Dix. Good evening, Mr. Gallman.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Gallman. I live at 523 Saluda Street. I just wanted to just highlight that in the ordinance, there should be some accommodations being made for, as was spoken about earlier, for those people who are senior citizens as well as those people who are disabled who have these properties. To whereas Mr. Yance talked about providing funding for this project. And that would be a great place to use some of that money to help those people who are handicapped as well as disabled, with those people like in the Edgewood area that I live in, we are willing to go and assist the homeowners who are elderly, those who are handicapped, to help them maintain their property. So each home that falls under violation of the ordinance, we can have it to where those people can be in alignment with having the good properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Yes, sir. One more. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. I'm Jesse Roach. I'm the current president of the Greater Aiken Estates Neighborhood Association, and our association comprises the 450 homes in the Greater Aiken Estates, but probably 1/3 of those are located within the city. And we are encouraging you to approve this ordinance, because if this ordinance is approved, then maybe we could get the county to do something that would say that we need something similar to this for areas that are contiguous to the city. Because our association members, they ask us, oh, what about this house here? No, it's in the county. We can't do anything about it. So maybe this would give some impetus for the county to do something for the areas where there are homes that are contiguous to the city. So maybe not as far as you're going, but at least it would move them in the right direction to address this issue, which is a real problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Very good. Thank you for your comments tonight. Any comments or questions from council?
I have a question that I'd like Mr. Biedenbach to expand on regarding the inventory that we just recently performed on these abandoned properties.
Yes, we had staff compile a list of boarded up property around the city, and I want to compliment Property Maintenance Code Inspector Teddy Umstead and Zoning Official Pete Fromer. They put that list together very quickly in less than 2 weeks, and there's 133 as of mid-March, 133 boarded up properties, improved properties in the city, and that list has been shared with council.
And we have, I thought that we had broken it down to critical.
Yes.
Into several sections.
That is correct. It is broken down by type of severity, and also whether it's, residential or commercial or non-residential, I guess.
I'm wondering whether all of you know what this ordinance will do. Are all of you all aware? Who's not aware of what the ordinance is going to do for you? Everybody's aware. Good. Good.
All right, very good. Any other comments from council?
I've seen that list, and I'd like us to get a game plan for how we're going to deal with that list. I wasn't aware it was broken out by criticality. The key to this whole thing is the guts of this council to enforce it. That's what's got to happen. We've had the rules, even some rules to deal with this, which have not been enforced. So I hope we can gather the courage to enforce it and to develop a plan to deal with these houses. Crossland Park, we just sort of went all over the place, and I don't know whether it's appropriate to do this, to deal with these houses neighborhood by neighborhood, but that's something the council should discuss. We need to discuss the financing of how it's going to happen as well.
You can expect a capital sales tax coming up. Some of you have already called me about funding, what funding can be used for this. And an amount was recommended in our capital sales tax which was deleted from that whole project, largely because, based on our attorney, we cannot fund this kind of projects. However, I'm told that other means are being reviewed to try to identify some funds to help with this project, and some other innovative approaches are being made as well. But the key here, too, is having designated staff and not have it as someone's part-time job or whenever they get a chance, monitor this. So designated staff would be needed for this kind of project to ensure the effectiveness of implementing this ordinance.
And I think it's appropriate that we start having this conversation now. Obviously, Councilwoman Price, as you're aware, as we have our first budget work session tonight, in fact. So I think it's important that we, as we review this, staff make sure that we do have the positions in place, because I think Councilman Dewar said it exactly correct. Having it on paper does not resolve the problem. It's the ability to enforce it. And right now, I can tell you, we have a department that is running ragged because they're understaffed. So I think it's important that we as a council give the support to those and create the positions to enforce the ordinance we're passing.
Mr. Mayor, my comment or question was in reference to personnel for that department. I think we got Teddy Umstead, and who else does he have with
He's
him?
just administrative staff. I mean, they pitch in where they can, but Teddy does it all, administrative, the paperwork and the writing around, and the paperwork is a tremendous amount of time.
Well, that can no longer be. We're going to have to come up with money to provide additional staff, and we got to do that as soon as possible. These property values are falling. It's embarrassing to bring people to Aiken knowing that we just got this award and they're seeing just one side of town. They're not being taken, they hadn't seen the whole picture. If they had, maybe the vote would have went another way. We want to be proud of our entire city, not just one side of Aiken, but we want to be able to show visitors all of Aiken.
Well,
and I know we got the good, the bad, and the ugly. All towns have one side with the haves and the have-nots, but still, even if we don't have a lot, we still want to maintain it. We want to keep it up. We want it to be presentable. So when we bring people here, when they come here to visit Aiken, they can say, you know what? That's a nice, clean, well-maintained city. It may not be perfect, but they are trying to make it the best that they can be, and that's what we want to be, the best that we can be. We can't be it if we don't have the personnel to help us enforce these ordinances. So we got to come up with some funds to get those positions, to post those positions, and fill those positions and implement this program, and we can't wait on it. We just can't. We've waited long enough. They've waited long enough.
Thank you, Ms. Diggs. All right, with that, have a vote. All those in favor of 10-4 ordinance? 10-4 unanimous. Congratulations. First.
I'll reiterate what the last gentleman said about getting the county involved. We've got to find a way to get the county to get involved. We've all gotten letters about the tire place out on Whiskey Road, NTB or whatever they're called, and they've got a mess up front. That's in the county. That's not in the city. One of the pictures on Lakeside Drive that Beth shared with us, that's a donut hole. That should have never happened in Jim Lakes, but that's unfortunate. That's in the county. The county needs to help us with those properties, and Aiken Estates certainly has more than anybody. So that's something, too, that needs to be looked at.
And Ed, let me add that people become confused with properties, dilapidated housing, or whatever issues we're having as to what is in the city, what is in the county.
That's right.
And many of the calls that I have gotten, it just doesn't happen to fall within the county's jurisdiction. So you end up calling the county council member. I have already spoken to my county council representative to ask him to make the same approach, take the same approach for county to ensure that we have neighborhoods that are free of dilapidated housing as best we can.
Right.
It only takes the will of us, you all, to make it happen.
Councilman DeWar.
Gives me a chance to get on the bandwagon for the closing of donut holes. We've done great work in identifying the donut holes in the city. We need to take that next step. We need to start having an election. Aiken Estates is probably a good place to start. Gem Lights might be a good place to start, but we need to try to eliminate the donut holes. It's frustrating, and I'm dealing with an issue where a city resident next to a county resident, and the county resident can burn, and the city resident can't, and it contaminates the neighborhood. So we need to work with the county, and I'd love to get a more formal agreement with the county, but I'd like to see us start to get more aggressive with the annexation as well.
All right. Well said. Very good. Okay, we have a full agenda, so we're going to move on down. Number 3 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to approve the sale of 902 Alfred Street Northeast in Crosland Park subdivision. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Some comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have tonight's second reading of an ordinance. An individual has stepped forth and wishes to purchase 902 Alfred Street in Crosland Park for $55,500 as an owner-occupied residence. And staff has reviewed this purchase, and it is now back to council for second reading of an ordinance to approve this sale, and then we can get a closing if council passes this before the end of the month.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 4 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving the sale of 1517 Wyman Street Northeast in Crosland Park subdivision. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Second, anyone?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have second reading tonight of an individual who's offered to purchase 1517 Wyman Street Northeast in Crosland Park for $55,000 as an owner-occupied resident. And again, council approved this also on first reading March 12th. And at second, if this passes on second reading, we can pursue a closing very soon on this property as well.
Thank you. Comments from the audience? Comments from council?
This is the next to last one that we own?
That is correct. We'll have first reading of the last one later tonight.
I'll save my comments for the
Okay,
last one.
very good. Very good. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 5 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex property located at 1517 Pine Log Road consisting of 0.96 acres of land, more or less owned by Larry Curry, and to zone the same residential single-family RS-15. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman DeWar. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, pursuant to our water sewer annexation policy, the property owner at 1517 Pine Log Road is requesting annexation and zoning to RS-15, and the Planning Commission reviewed this request at their February 13th meeting and recommended annexation and the zoning of RS-15, and council approved this at first reading March 12th, so it's back for second and final reading tonight to annex property at 1517 Pine Log Road and zone at RS-15.
Thank you, Mr. Beatonbaum. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 6 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance designating the Hotel Aiken as a historic site under the City of Aiken Historic Preservation Ordinance. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Duar. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the Design Review Board in January reviewed a request from Shaw Investments LLC to designate the Hotel Aiken as a, to the Aiken Historic Register as a historic site. This was sent on to the Planning Commission, and at their February 13th meeting, the Planning Commission received the recommendation and considered the request, voted unanimously to recommend to City Council approval of Hotel Aiken as a historic site. Council at your meeting on March 12th approved this ordinance on first reading, and as council must do, had to designate the Hotel Aiken as either as a contributing structure, which it chose to do. And for second reading tonight is this ordinance to designate Hotel Aiken to the Historic Register as a contributing structure / historic site.
Very good. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? Yes, sir, Mr. Waltz.
I see Mr. Shaw's here. I have a question for him, if you could come up. Sure.
Good evening, Neil.
Good evening, City Council. Good evening, Mayor Osmond.
Hey, once we do this, what are your plans moving forward at this point? I mean, what's the next process for you, and where are we going to go with the hotel?
We're already undergoing, we've already started the project. So, I mean, the hotel has been shut down since December. So we've been aggressively working inside.
I mean, getting permits, getting designs and reviews.
We can't do that until we get some structural analysis completed. So we're working on that as we speak, actually. But we have to get the historic site designation completely done, so we can also make sure we follow all the guidelines that the city of Aiken's going to require.
And what happens if the structural analysis doesn't pan out the way you need it to?
No, it's working. It's just a matter of what we're going to have to do.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the building.
When would you see starting this?
It's already started. It's shut down since December. So, I mean, it's just a matter of getting things in order with the architectural drawings can't be completed until the historical site guidelines are completed. They've been working on whatever they can. So, I mean, we're just, it's a slow process because it's not a new construction. So when you're doing a historical rehab, it's a lot more intense.
Okay. I think a lot of people have had questions about what's happening. So.
Yes, sir. I'm sure there's a ton of questions out there. We're moving as diligently, as fast as possible. It's just a lot of work.
Now,
How long,
Go ahead, Ms. Councilmember Diggs.
how long will it take for the project to be complete?
You know, we were hoping for masters, but when we decided to go for historic site designation, it's going to take a lot longer.
Okay.
So,
You think 6
I really don't want
months,
to. I'm sorry?
maybe? 6 months?
Oh, no. This will probably end up being at the end of next year now. That's what we're thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. We've tried to keep as many people enlightened as possible. We're working really, really hard, though. I mean, money's, every time we don't have a day open, we're losing money, so trying to work real hard.
Neil, you've determined your GC on this project now, haven't you?
Yeah, we're pretty close. We've got somebody on board that we think we're going to work with. We're having meetings. I was there last week in Atlanta, Georgia with our architect, and I'm going back again this week, and it's just getting more and more.
And what flag are you going to have? What hotel?
I'm sorry?
What hotel will it be?
It's going to be Hotel Aiken still, but it's going to be by Courtyard by Marriott.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have they approved this? Have they announced this already, that they're coming to?
Yeah, we have a franchise license.
Yep. Well, we appreciate all the steps you're going through. We appreciate it and look forward to a great project.
Thank you.
Is your restaurant still open?
No, it's closed. I think they're going to reopen somewhere.
Okay.
I think the owners are going to open up somewhere in Aiken back.
Thank you.
So, Neil, I'm puzzled with your design. Does that have to be approved by Marriott based on some of their standards?
We actually went through that hurdle before we came back to the city to make sure that they were happy with what we had presented to the city. So they know, they have a decent idea, guidelines of what we're doing. It's gonna be a very unique, custom, boutique-y, it's not your traditional courtyard. Have every modern amenity that you will have in any hotel. Marriott is very happy with it. They've given us nothing but positive feedback on what we gave them, and what we've given them is pretty close to what we're going to be doing.
Very good. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, council? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 7 under old business. This is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending the budget of the city of Aiken for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have tonight an ordinance to amend our budget for fiscal year 17-18 for several of our funds. Our solid waste fund, as we described at a prior meeting, has a shortfall due to several factors listed, including some tropical storms and hurricane type weather that hit us in the fall, turnover of drivers and old vehicles requiring some maintenance. Plus, we also received a grant from DHEC for mosquito control, which we have to amend the budget for to account for the revenue and any subsequent expenditures. And finally, an HVAC unit went out in this building and needs to be replaced. And the cost is $9,400 using building depreciation funds, which would require a budget transfer. So for council approval is second reading of an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 17-18 budget for these items discussed.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Any comments or questions from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 8 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending section 2-3 of the land development regulations of the city of Aiken regarding variances. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have had several minor subdivision requests come to the planning department for review, and our current land development regulations stipulate that any of these minor subdivisions requests must go to the planning commission for review. However, after Council Member Waltz asked for a review, we discovered, the city attorney did, that the South Carolina Code of Laws requires that the BZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals, is the entity that must hear these variance requests. We approved this item on first reading at our February 12th meeting, then sent it to the Planning Commission for their review. They passed it at their March 13th meeting, and now it is back to council for second and final reading to amend Section 2.3 of the land development regulations regarding variances and which entity would hear them for minor subdivisions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Biedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments, questions from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to the section of new business under the agenda. Number 1, this is first reading of an ordinance to amend the city code regarding tethering of dogs by title, and ordinance amending section 8-19 of the Aiken City Code. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Jericho. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we've been working for several months for an amendment to bring to you addressing the tethering of dogs and the confining of animals and motor vehicles during periods of extreme hot or cold weather. What precipitated this was Aiken County passed a tethering ordinance in 2017. We used their ordinance as a baseline, and our ordinance does have several differences. Number one, the key differences is the county section refers to tethering time of 4 hours. Ours allows for a period of up to 13 hours provided adequate food, food and water and shelter are provided. I think the genesis or the thought process behind that is individuals that do work, shift work up to 12 hours, that would account for that. The county ordinance does not address severe weather conditions, but our ordinance requires owners not to tether animals for longer than 15 minutes when a weather advisory is listed. And one other thing also we added was animals and motor vehicles during periods of extreme hot and cold. Right now, of course, we can't address that, but this gives us a little more definable criteria. Our public safety officers and environmental/animal control officers a little more something more definable for them to have when they're reviewing these situations. So tonight we have first reading of an ordinance to amend section 8-19 of the city code as it relates to tethering of animals, and it adds the motor vehicle provision as well.
Very good, thank you. And I'll open it up for public comment. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Rick.
Hey.
I'm Robin Mitchell. I'm the founder of Saving the Chain Dogs, and I live at 515 Mayfield Road in Aiken, South Carolina. I was one of the head people over the county change in the ordinance back in March of 2017. I just wanted to show you a little bit about what's in our beautiful city, in our beautiful downtown city. This is a collar with a sock and duct tape, and this was the chain that the dog was on. Now, these chains are actually small compared to what we find in the county. The county's chains are about 75, 80 pounds. In the city, most of the time, we find these. My program was designed for Aiken County originally, but we get calls every day. We go out for free. We work totally off of donations. And here's another collar. And this is in Aiken City. These are right downtown, right off of Chesterfield and Lawrence and then Crosland Park.
This was Crosland Park.
And,
These were in sewage.
Yeah.
These dogs, 6 dogs were in sewage.
And they were all tethered together on the same long chains
A collar.
with these as collars. And we see these at beautiful homes, and we see these at homes that you just talked about in your 10-4 section code. You know,
This is a collar.
we see 30-pound dogs
That's a collar.
on, 40-pound chains, and we
Actually,
see-
they're car chains that you reel out car motors with, that be on dogs.
Yeah. So,
It's sad.
to make our work easier, so that we don't have to get these heart-wrenching calls, we do appreciate
We do.
that y'all go forward with the ordinance and accepting the counties and even the new stipulations that you've put in place, because this is not what dogs are supposed to live like.
You're okay with 13 hours?
I'm not really okay with 13 hours. I'd rather it be 4 to 6, and I would rather someone be at the home during that time. At the time, we could get what we could get for the county. I hope that soon that we can go back in and, redo that ordinance some. Hopefully, you know, when you all pass it, that it'll be easier for the county to go back in and change some of theirs.
What would you change with the counties if you could?
You know, if it were up to me, I would go with no tethering whatsoever. Unfortunately, in some areas where people live, they can't afford fences, or the dogs will get hit if they don't tether them some sort of way. My biggest thing is that the time changes so that they're not tethered out there 24/7. Because even though it says 4 hours or 13 hours, they're there 24/7. Unless it's enforced, then they're there.
It's a sad situation.
Yeah.
We see it every day. We go home with that every day.
Well, ladies, we appreciate you being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Any other comments? Ms. Nielsen? Good evening.
I'm Barbara Nelson. I'm the president and CEO of the Albrecht Center for Animal Welfare. And of course, I'm in favor of this proposed ordinance amendment. Something that needs to be cleared up. The county's ordinance doesn't put a 4-hour time limit on how long a dog can be on a tether. That 4 hours does not refer to the total time like the city of Aiken's does, which is 13. That 4 hours only refers to the period of time that a dog can be tied up without food or water. So actually, this ordinance from the city of Aiken is much better for animal welfare, much better for the dogs, because it says that you cannot do it for longer than 13 hours within a 24-hour period. I just wanted to clear up that confusion there. So don't think that the county ordinance limits the time period of a dog on a chain or a tether or a rope for 4 hours, because it does not. Okay?
Thank you for the clarification. Any other comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Would you like to come say something? Good evening. What's your name?
My name is Bryn Brown, and I was at the St. Andrew's Society, and someone was here, the leader of the St. Andrews.
Yes, and this young lady is a very excellent Scottish dancer.
I just wanted to say that if you were on a train with no food or water for a day, what would you be like?
We wouldn't like it very much, would we?
And I've always been really loving animals, and I have a dog and a cat at home, and I run my dog a lot, and I love my dog, my animals, and I play with my cat with a laser light a lot.
Ms. Brown, I have 2 labs, and I run them a lot, or they run me a lot, too. So you would be in favor of us not having or passing this legislation, correct?
Yes, please.
Very, very good. Well, thank you for participating in the process and letting your voice be heard.
Can you tell us how old you are and what school you attend?
I'm 8 years old, and I go to Horse Creek Academy in Aiken, South Carolina.
Well, I'm sure your teachers and principal are very proud of you, aren't they?
And I can tell you, this young lady was up at Casey on Saturday. I think you were there dancing, were you not? Now that you have recovered from your accident?
Yes.
And she's dedicated to preserving the Scottish culture, and we're just absolutely delighted to have you here tonight, Bryn. Thank you. That takes a lot of courage to come up and talk to
Sure
a
does.
group like this, so
Absolutely.
we appreciate it.
Any other comments from the audience? Yes, sir. Good evening.
My name is Nick Ingalls, 911 Alfred Street. I've been a dog owner most of my life. I've only had one dog on a tether. That was during my college years. I didn't have him on a tether because I couldn't afford a fence. I had him on a tether because he was incredibly stinky. I tried cleaning with spaghetti sauce, but that still wouldn't clean him up and get the funk away. But even during those years, I've never had him on a chain. I've always had him on a long, heavy-duty cable, which were a lot later than chains. Even at the time, I built a dog house out of spare wood, which was bigger than my bedroom at the time. So my dog will easily comply with this order. My current dogs are inside dogs, so there's no reason no one, even if you're poor, going to school and have virtually no money as I did, I always took care of my dogs that would easily comply with this ordinance and even stronger ones. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ingalls. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm not exactly sure what I want to say, but I just started, Robin and Angie became friends of mine in the last year, and I'm a dog groomer, have been for 27 years, moved to Aiken in 2007, and I've groomed dogs all over the South. I'm from Georgia originally, lived in Florida for the past 9 years, from Atlanta, Georgia originally. My name is Chrissy Bowers, by the way, if I didn't say that. And needless to say, I'm a dog person. You know, I love dogs, but I'm realistic about dogs. I have 7 dogs of my own. They're with me 24/7. If I'm outside all day, they're outside with me. They like to be with me.
They're not in your car right now, are they?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they are. 6 of them, as a matter of fact. And I bought a Ford Expedition just for that very reason. They're with me 24 hours a day, at all times. And so I was listening to the car, the car issue, and that is an issue for me. I mean, I probably would get arrested of breaking somebody's window if there were a dog in a car on a hot day and the car wasn't running with the AC on. My point was about the tethering and some of the things that I hear from people, and I know there are a lot of people that are uneducated here about the proper care of dogs. They've grown up with a certain type of care. They've grown up with a certain arrangement that has always been hunting dogs in the backyard, living on the end of a chain. They did their jobs 3 months out of the year. Back on the chain they went, back in the kennels, and they were just sort of a means to an end at this point, And so as we go along, we understand more about the care of dogs, and to be able to impart that information to these people and help educate them, which is what Robin does in a very good way that most of us aren't able to do. It is also important that these people maybe have a place where they can go to look, that the county has a place where the telephone numbers where people can call to get information on how to better take care of their dogs. And that leaving a dog, I don't care if it's shift work or not, if you cannot provide proper care for a dog and leave it on a chain when it's 100 degrees outside, no dog for you, period.
Very good.
There's just no wiggle room here. If you can't provide the proper care for a sentient being, it is not a house plant. It is a living, breathing being with a brain, a heart, lungs, a nervous system. They need proper care. So this, and enforcement, like Robin said, is key. And she is available 24/7 to help people in this county. And, she's trying to gather up more people, and I'm trying to participate more with her
Very
as
good.
well. So, thank you.
Chrissy, thank you for being here tonight. You want anything different you'd add? Any comments from council? Ms. Walsh?
Mr. Mayor, this is a topic that's going on all over the state, and every city and municipality, I think, right now is looking at it. I want to make sure we have one of the best ordinances out there. So I've reached out to an old friend, Dr. Patricia Hill, as the past president of the South Carolina Veterinary Association, and now serves as the legislative person for that board and helps write these laws all over the state. And she's agreed to look at this proposal for us and see if she can add any comments or suggestions that might make it better, make it stronger, and help out for us. So with the council's permission, I'm going to forward that to her and get her information on that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. In fact, let's get that to staff, and if you could have that before second reading, I think that input would be invaluable.
I think it will. Yeah.
Thank you for taking that initiative.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments. been involved with dogs, I guess, since I was 13, and been involved with the military working dogs during my military career. I just have a hard time with 13 hours. I don't know why. There's some holes in it. I mean, I understand the need for shift worker to have a dog, but you know what happens if the person's at work and 4 hours later, there's a weather alert, and the person can't get back to do anything?
Yeah.
How many animal control officers do we have that would be able to enforce this? I'm not even sure I know how many we have now. I think at least one. Chief?
We have one.
One, okay. You know, I'd be very interested in Council Member Woltz's response from that person who obviously is an expert at it, but I just have a hard time with 13 hours. I don't have a magic number. The other thing that's kind of vague is the heat or the cold. Obviously, if the engine's running and you assume the air conditioning's on, that's fine, but you know, I take my dog out, sometimes it's 70, 75 degrees. That's fine to me. I know it's fine to him, but it might not be fine to somebody walking by the car that sees the dog in there and is not a dog owner or doesn't understand that some of us are responsible. So it's first reading. This is the time to get these questions resolved, and I'll be very interested in, I hope we can get those comments as soon as they come in.
I want to make sure we have an ordinance that's enforceable and that we know will hold up to any challenges, and I think this is the person who can help us do that.
This is almost like the first item we dealt with, code enforcement. You know, we need more. We may need more than one animal control officer for this as well. I mean, this is tragic for an animal to be out in the elements, or even a water dish that the dog gets excited and spills 3 hours into the shift. You know, so it's a tough issue. I honestly wish we didn't have to deal with it, but we have no choice.
We'll get that before second reading.
Yeah, if we could get that and get to all the other councilmen, I suspect they're going to come in with something under 13 hours, quite frankly, but I look forward to seeing it. I suspect they'll come in with a recommendation under 13 hours, quite frankly. But, so.
And I would just say that all of our council emails are on the line, so if you got comments, send them to us. I don't mind receiving comments. I'd like to know how the community feels about it.
Absolutely.
So.
And I echo that. I'd like to see it be a little tougher and be interesting to see what they come up with, because my wife said I better support this or not come home tonight. So.
You know, my wife said the same thing.
I'm sure your wife said the same thing, but both being who they are.
Actually, she came to make sure I did. So.
Good. Holly, welcome tonight. We're glad you're here. He's behaving greatly tonight. So.
Well, I don't know, but we get comments about the work session.
All those in favor on first reading of an ordinance to amend the city code regarding tetherings of dogs at this time?
I'll support it just a second reading. I'm not sure I will at second reading.
And we'll have that information. That's unanimous. And we'll have that information for staff to bring to us before second reading, okay?
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here tonight, who spoke on it. We appreciate it. Moving down new business to number 2. This is a resolution approving a statewide mutual aid agreement for emergency and disaster response recovery. Is there a motion?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Comments from staff?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, the South Carolina Code requires that all cities and counties cooperate in developing a plan for mutual assistance in emergencies. We have all worked with the South Carolina Emergency Management Division. They are a big help whenever there's a weather, tropical storm, ice storm, etc. We benefited from them, and they have presented us with a mutual aid agreement for council's review and approval that gives us the ability to provide appropriate law enforcement and fire protection assistance, or to receive assistance from other agencies during the event of certain large-scale emergencies. And this will broaden some of our individual mutual aid agreements to agencies throughout the state, and sets out the period of assistance and who would request it, the procedures for the aid, etc. And it also specifies the necessary food, housing, and expenses that would get billed from the assisting party to the requesting party. So for council consideration is this resolution approving a statewide mutual aid agreement for emergency and disaster response / recovery with the state of South Carolina.
All right, thank you, Mr. Beanbo. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Number 3 is the first reading of an ordinance to annex and zone property at 1513 Pine Log Road as residential single family. By title, an ordinance to annex property located at 1513 Pine Log Road and to zone the same residential single family RS15. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Diggs. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, pursuant to our water and sewer annexation policy, property owner at 1513 Pine Log Road is requesting annexation and zoning of residential single-family RS15. The Planning Commission, at their March 13th, 2018 meeting, considered the request and recommended that the property be annexed and zoned RS15. So for council consideration is first reading to annex 1513 Pine Log Road and zone it RS15.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor on first reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 4 under new business, this is a first reading of an ordinance amending the Aiken City Code regarding special real property tax assessments for rehabilitated historic properties. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Price, is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Girardeau. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the Design Review Board reviewed and then recommended to the Planning Commission that our code be amended regarding the special tax assessment for the rehabilitation of historic properties. The special tax assessment is designed to promote the rehabilitation of landmark or contributing historic properties by freezing the assessed value of the property. When improvements are valued and made in excess of 20% of the appraised or assessed value. We need some additional clarification, the DRB believes, to as what would count towards that 20% expenditure threshold, and also to align our city code text with the South Carolina, state of South Carolina policies. And Planning Commission reviewed that recommendation from DRB at their March 13th meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the text amendments to the city code. So we have tonight consideration of the first reading of the ordinance to amend the city code regarding the special real property tax assessments for rehabilitated historic properties.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Is there somebody that can break this out for, let's say, a historic building that's going to have additions made to it in addition to rehabilitation?
Have the Hotel Aiken and
Yeah,
you
well,
have the county complex.
The perfect example. I mean, what part of reconstruction or remodeling is covered and what part is not? Just
I think part of it, too, it removed a potential loophole where if there have, I think, been property owners have taken like a new accessory structure to the Design Review Board wanting this assessment, and this closes that, because obviously if you build a new separate structure on the property, it's not going to be historic per se. And I think that was one of the main thrusts of this amendment to the city code as it relates to this special tax assessment.
But how about a new portion of an old building that is qualified?
I'm going to defer to Maria Moultrie from our planning department, who is here tonight.
Good evening, Maria.
Hi, for those that haven't met me, I'm Maria Moultrie. I'm with the planning department. The intent of it is to tighten it up and to ensure that as far as the state's concerned, it would be modifications that have to do with the actual historic structure to make it more modern instead of actually creating new structures. So that, it's tightening up to make sure it's not something that's not within the historic structure itself.
But in the case, okay, in the case of the Aiken Hotel, they're going to redo the hotel, but then they're going to add things. So obviously, you freeze the value of the property as it is today.
That's correct.
And then 20% of what's in the old hotel is a limit, or how does that apply to the new portion of the building that's attached?
My understanding is if, say, for example, they needed to bump out the footprint to make it more modern, that could still apply. But it's not necessarily a solely separate structure. That makes sense? So it would still be something that would be part of the original footprint, but it would make it more modern.
Okay.
Again, each of these elements would have to be pre-certified by DRB.
Okay. As long as you're comfortable with it, I guess.
Now, the definition of historic in this case is not necessary. Neil just is getting his designated as historic.
That's correct.
This would go to a house that was built previous to a certain date, correct?
Well, my understanding is this is for those that are considered historic structures or contributing structures.
All right, so they do have to have a designation.
That would be on on the historic register for the city
Some
of
built
Aiken.
before a certain date are, by definition, okay.
Right.
Well, that's us.
It's going to have some designation.
A 50-year-old structure qualifies.
That's what I was understanding. Is this the same thing as the Heslips?
Yep.
And it was passed earlier, and we called it the Heslip bill or something like that.
The Bailey bill.
Instead of Bailey, we gave it to the Heslips who left, I think. But that it's not somebody having to go, as Neil had to come here and ask for a designation, that somebody who owns a house that was built prior to, I don't know, 1960, what was it, 40, 30, it was 1970 even, might be, if it's 50. Does that be 30, almost, it'd be 68.
We can get you the answer, we can get you a good answer before second reading.
Okay.
Just
Well,
to make it be-
just-
Ryan will be back by then, and we can get a complete, what it takes to qualify for it.
And I support this. This is a great idea, and this is great for helping people do more work on the older buildings downtown to preserve them. We just need a better understanding of what that is going to be indication of.
Right.
Because it sounds like you just keep the facade and rebuild everything else, and it would still qualify?
Well, it has to be something that would make it more usable in modern, again, it would be a case by case.
And right now it's structured to go to DRB.
Right, that's exactly right, to pre-certify.
But do I understand it has to be more than 50 years old? So like you said, a house built in the 60s or 70s?
68. 68 would be 50 years.
Yeah.
Well, the building qualifies, gosh. Aiken Hotel's been around a long time.
The hotel in the hospital, old hospital, would qualify, but those are great big structures. We're talking about little houses that were built in 1940, 1950, whatever. We got plenty of those. We just talked about tearing down the dilapidated ones. That would encourage that as well. If those are worth saving, maybe somebody gets involved and does it there. But they're not going to be deemed historic necessarily.
Stuart, could we have clarification on
Yes.
that before second reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, because, again, my understanding was it had to be contributing or part of the register, so
No,
we'll
thank-
clarify that.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Good. All right. All those in favor on first reading? And that's unanimous, thank you. Moving down to number 5 under new business, this is a first reading of an ordinance amending the old Aiken design guidelines regarding window signs. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the old Aiken design guidelines regulate exterior improvements and appearance within an area that includes the downtown business district, which is under the guidance of the Design Review Board. And lately, and I've spoken with some of council about this. We've seen a trend in advertising and utilizing window graphics to brand the businesses therein and to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, which promotes certain design regulations. The Design Review Board recommended changes and clarifications to those, to the section of the Old Aiken Design Guidelines regarding window signage. And the proposed amendment would allow for exceptions for window coverage to screen utility, mechanical, and office space and waiting areas and vacant spaces where the sign would still address pedestrian traffic and not detract from the building architecture, and would also allow for external application of signage. And the Planning Commission considered the Design Review Board's amendment and recommended approval to council. And tonight we have first reading of this ordinance to amend the Old Aiken Design Guidelines for window signage.
All right, thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Yeah, once again, I'm having trouble understanding what staff is trying to do. Are we still going to allow 50% of the window to be covered with this change?
It would be,
Greater than 50%.
yes, we'll let Maria address that.
Maria, you're getting a workout tonight.
I am telling you. So the intent is, again, to allow some flexibility. Again, it would be to try to maintain the 50%, but just to, again, to allow some flexibility for those areas that might need additional screening, and it would have to go to the DRB again for a case-by-case review.
What do you mean by additional screening?
Well, in case they had areas where they needed a little bit more than 50%, the intent is not to encourage people to come in with the big wraps and cover complete windows, but it is to look at individual instances and allow some flexibility with the amount.
I got to tell you, I think the melon mushroom looks terrible. It's way, way big and distorted for signage. I just don't think that 50% on that particular window, which was supposed to be paned to begin with, but it wouldn't have made any difference. Even if it was paned, that's probably the largest window downtown, but gosh.
So, and some of that too is because it also allows logos. So even if the logo is not what we would particularly like or care for, just for a particular taste or whatever, it's still allowed per the guidelines because it's their logo.
Well,
yeah.
But so what you're asking us to approve is something that's going to keep the 50%.
Allows, again, that's correct, keep the 50% and also allow for some additional flexibility on site if need be. Yeah.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Okay, all those in favor on first reading of an ordinance amending the Old Aiken Design Guidelines regarding window signs? That's Councilman Waltz, Councilwoman Price, the mayor, Councilman Diggs, and Councilman Jarrett. 4, all those opposed?
I just can't. It's just too much. It's too ugly. Sorry.
All right, moving down to number 6 under new business. This is first reading of an ordinance to amend the 2017-18 budget to repair a well at Citizens Park. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Jarrett. Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have, our Parks and Recreation Directors requested that the council consider a budget amendment to include revenue and expenditures for the well at Citizens Park number 4, which went down last month. It irrigates our fields at Citizens Park 2 and 4. We received bids for the repair, and the lowest responsible bid was $30,347 from Austin Drilling of Columbia. And we recommend budget adjustment using the following hospitality tax revenues and expenditures to complete this project for consideration for first reading tonight.
All right, thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Okay, comments from council? All those in favor on first reading? And that's unanimous, thank you. Moving down to number 7, this is approval of a resolution for agreement with Amoresco, Inc. for replacement of HVAC at Odell Weeks. Center. By title, a resolution authorizing the City of Aiken to enter into an emergency services agreement with Amoresco, Inc. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Councilwoman Diggs, comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, last late summer, we began an RFP process to do a detailed energy audit of multiple city facilities. The first area we asked him to review was the HVAC system at the Odell HO Weeks Center. Due to multiple breakdowns we've had over the years. Currently, or actually last fiscal year, 16-17, we spent about $40,000 to do this repair, and another $47,000 has been spent this year. And Amoresco is who we selected to do this audit, and they presented us with a plan for HVAC upgrades to include energy conservation measures to support these energy cost savings. And due to the immediate HVAC needs at the Weeks Center and various time sensitivities with summer coming, we've got an emergency contract to begin this HVAC work at the Odell Weeks Center. And any additional energy capital equipment identified through this process will be procured through our regular sealed bid procurement process, and we're recommending an interfund loan from our equipment replacement fund and paying it back within a period of time from 12 and a half to 15 years. And for council consideration is approval of this agreement with Amoresco for the Odell Weeks Center HVAC replacement.
All right, thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Yes. I'm not, I've been trying to find exactly the total cost of the contract is $637,991. Does this include the unit as well, or it's just a study?
No, this would be a unit replacement. We have entered into an agreement for them to do an energy audit, and their payment, a lot of their payment would come from energy savings that are identified. This is something, as you know, we've got our physical plant consists of buildings of various ages, and that is, I guess, sort of the way that the payments would be made, just in totality with Amoresco.
Councilman Waltz?
I just have a question or comment, I guess. We just approved a well for $30,000, and that person's not from around here. We do this. Do we not have local vendors can do this stuff? I mean, we keep approving for people out of town. Why can't we get more local people?
Well, we did. I mean, the bid tab, for example, for the last item listed some local vendors, and we do have in our procurement code a local vendor preference that's capped at $3,000. But again, we could do. I mean, if council so desires, we could review our procurement code to try to amend it to give a better local vendor preference. I guess you find the balance between using local vendors and also minimizing the expense that is incurred from these projects that we have.
Well, it seems to me we hire these people from out of town, then the local guys are the ones that are going to maintain it. And we need to let our local vendors do this work.
Sure,
whenever possible. And
I agree. We do.
Here we're talking about $750,000 going outside of town. I'd like to see that money stay here.
Yes, and we do a lot of business with local vendors, but that's a fair point, Councilmember Waltz, and I agree. And Amoresco is here. I mean, they could talk a little bit more about this particular issue with the HVAC system at the Weeks Center, but I guess to your larger point, that is something that could be reviewed, with our purchasing code.
I mean, I have no problem. I'm sure they're a fine company, but I just would like to see us keep our money at home.
Understood, and
Come
fair
from
point.
Massachusetts and make a profit. I'm sure our guys could too.
I heard loud and clear.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Now, you say buildings, how many buildings does this involve?
I'd have to pull the RFP, Councilman Jarrett, but it's a number of our older buildings that, we've got buildings built in the 60s and 70s.
I was going to say, all the buildings, Odell Weeks Center was built in
75.
So it almost meets the
Hazel.
50-year-old building qualification.
Yeah,
for
maybe they could
historic.
get a historic designation. But yeah, we do have a lot of old buildings, correct, but they are hopefully helping us identify where we can save money. I know we just, from our work session today, council has asked us to, try to identify where we can, cut some costs and so forth. And this is, I think, one method that we can do that.
Well, surely this isn't the original HVAC at Odell Weeks, is it?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I don't know if maybe staff could answer that question, the age of that particular system. I don't know off the top of my head.
I can tell you that it's not.
Okay.
I wouldn't think that it could possibly be.
I've been here
50.
for about 70 years, so I can exaggerating, but it is not.
I wouldn't think it would last that long.
Time to be quiet.
Well said. All right, all those in favor of this resolution? Tom? Okay. And that's unanimous, thank you. Moving down to number 8, our new business. This is approval of a resolution renewing and revising the memorandum of understanding with the Aiken Community Playhouse for use of the Aiken Performing Arts Theater. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Councilwoman Diggs, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we last entered into an MOU with the Aiken Community Playhouse for use and operations of the Performing Arts Center, the Aiken Performing Arts Center, and the MOU has expired, and it's time to consider the renewal. And staff and the Playhouse have reviewed the MOU and recommended this document to you tonight. And it is recommended that the MOU be for a period of 5 years rather than 2 years as in the past. So we have for consideration a revised MOU with the Playhouse for use and operation of the AECOM Performing Arts Center.
Why did staff recommend 2 years instead of 5 years instead of 2?
I think part of it is just, it does give a little extra time because, the 2 years go by fast. And one thing, too, to keep in mind, we also have, the Playhouse has a lease on the building, which is a separate document that was initially approved in 2002 that is a 10-year lease that has 9 10-year renewals to it. So that addresses some of the things that have come up, for example, like the ticket fee, we get $1 for every ticket sold. So this one is part of that versus the 5 years versus 2 years. I think it's just an administrative issue, but if the timing is an issue, we could certainly review that if council would like us to review it more regularly.
Does it run concurrent with the lease?
It does not. The lease was last renewed in 2012, so there would be a year.
It runs every 10 years.
Every 10 years, so the next time that lease would come up would be 2022.
All right.
But our next 5 year, would it run out in 2000?
This would run out in 2023.
Right, why don't we adjust it so they run out together, even if it's for 5 years, just have the
That way it
5 year
would be-
periods
Sure.
go together.
That's a fair point. If there could be an amendment to change the time period from 5 years to 4 years.
We're talking about this ordinance, and we're not talking about any financial issues at all. I can remember being on council when does anybody know how much we get for every ticket sold to help us provide the support?
$1.
Okay, and when's that last been adjusted?
I think it's original to the 2002 lease.
I asked, I'd just as soon defer this item until we get a P&L and see exactly what it is. I fully support the Arts Center, But I think to support it without knowing what we're supporting and what the cost of what we're supporting is doesn't make sense to me. And I think I'm fine with the 2 years, but I would like to know the cost to the city of this resolution. And we're doing a lot. I mean, we're obligating quite a bit.
My understanding, that's with the contract, though, not the memorandum of understanding. Like the ticket number, I mean, I still think we should have that P&L, don't get me wrong, but.
Well, I thought I'd
But I
ask for it.
I think we negotiate that, or we talk about that when we do the contract every 10 years.
I'm confused then. In addition to this, we're having a contract?
Yes, yes.
It's a lease it's the lease, actually, not.
Okay.
But the lease is for the property. This defines what the city provides.
Yes.
And this provides what the Playhouse provides. Not AECom, but what the Playhouse provides. So the resolution is with ACP. And gosh, we're paying for half the employee. No, we're paying for a full-time employee, for training, cost of educational outreach program. The space is free for schools, which is fine. Building maintenance is up to us. We're dividing 50/50 cost of mutually used production equipment. I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know how much money that is involved. We assist in promoting performances for use by Channel 4. I'm not even sure any of those programs can be televised. And we provide computer services and equipment and services. I mean, I would just like more detail, and maybe it's time to increase the fee that the city gets we just went through an issue with the water rates and to make sure that we're covering costs, but I don't know how much we're spending. I fully support it. I just want to know how much that support
Well,
is.
we have the executive director here, Thurman Watley, and not to put Thurman on the spot, but maybe we need a work session that Thurman and some of the folks can educate us.
And Thurman has been very patient with this, let me just say, because I've held this up with some questions I had beforehand. Can we take that as a motion to continue this until we have a work session that Thurman can come in, and Kyle is here, so.
Thurman, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's been very,
Right.
truthfully, I called Thurman and said, look, I know I've held this up and I got my question, so I think that's reasonable, so.
And we can do that in the next few weeks.
You have a motion to continue this?
Yes.
Okay.
Second that.
And I would
And a
move
second.
mine to.
Okay, all those in favor of continuing this item?
I want to make clear, I will support it. I
Right.
had a wonderful time there Friday night. It's a vital asset to the community. I just want to know what.
Well, let me
I
just.
agree with what you're saying, but you bring up a solid point, and Ed's point's good too.
If I may add, Mr. Mayor, when we discussed the building of this facility, if you look back in history of what was sitting there in the past, we recognized that we were not going to make a lot of money off of this theater. And so given that, there are some folks that may serve on that board that have the history that can share this with council as well, who wasn't around when the theater was built, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen and supporters, for sitting here with us tonight. Moving down to number 9, this is first reading of an ordinance to approve the sale of 721 Vincent Avenue Northeast in Crosland Park subdivision. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Proudly.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
You like the second?
Second.
Very good.
Waiting to say something.
Comments from staff?
That'll be the next reading.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. An individual's offered to purchase 721 Vincent Avenue for $54,000 as an owner-occupied residence. And we purchased this home in 2009 for $50,000, and including that purchase price, we've spent $112,189 on the property. And staff has reviewed the purchase and recommends we proceed with the sale for $54,000 or appraised value. Just as a side note, this home initially we had first reading to transfer to Second Baptist CDC for $1. And after speaking with Mr. Ramsour, when this opportunity was presented to us, he was very enthusiastic and said to certainly pursue this. since it is going to be an owner-occupied house, and as was asked to answer the question earlier, this will be, should this go through, the last house or property or house that we would have in Crosland Park. The only thing left, once this is completed, will be the park, the Parks and Recreation maintained park, a community garden, the 2 pocket parks that lead into the Aiken Middle and North Aiken Elementary, and the Crosland Park house that Public Safety maintains for us. So that would be it with our venture in Crosland Park in terms of the home sales and owner-occupied housing initiative.
Very good. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. You want to save your comments for second?
I'm saving it for the second reading.
Okay. Moving now to that portion of our agenda, petitions and requests. Number 1, this is a request for approval of a resolution authorizing the provision of water and sanitary sewer utility services to the property located at the intersection of Whiskey Road and South Meadows Boulevard. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. That's Councilman Waltz with the motion and Councilman Jardo with the second. Okay, comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is a resolution to provide water and sanitary sewer utility services. I do want to say at the last paragraph of the memo refers to it as first reading of an ordinance, but it is a resolution, the one reading. The applicant and owner are requesting city water and sanitary sewer service to property at the intersection of Whiskey Road and South Meadows to build up to an 80-bed senior living facility on this undeveloped parcel. And our utility policy requires that any development of a site in an unincorporated area must be approved by City Council after Planning Commission review should city water and sewer service be available to the site. And the Planning Commission reviewed this request at the March 13th meeting with the conditions listed. The proper, again, the council consideration is this resolution to provide city water and sewer service to this property at the intersection of Whiskey Road and South Meadows with the conditions noted by the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Good evening.
No, my name's David Banks. I'm here representing the owner. I'm doing the engineering and surveying for this project. I would like to give my appreciation for y'all to hear me tonight. My client has purchased this property or is in the process of doing that and would like to develop a assisted living in this area. The reason for them coming to this area is because this area is underserved for this type of facility. This was a prime location for them. It's good access, and of course, water and sewer have been already stepped to the property for the development of this property when South Meadows was developed. These services were extended to it. I know Whiskey Road I've done a lot of work on Whiskey Road, and traffic is an issue in this area, and the good thing about the assisted living, there's both good and bad. There's not a lot of traffic generated by these facilities, so I think I can keep y'all's mind at ease on that. There's very low traffic, unfortunately. So,
thank you.
Any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Are there any questions from Mr. Banks at this time?
I think there was some questions in our packets from some of the residents in South Meadows. Were they addressed?
Not formally, no, ma'am.
Okay.
I'll be happy to address them.
Okay.
And I do have those lists here.
Okay.
They asked where the exit and entrance of the new building. Those plans have not been finalized. We propose that we most likely will be facing Whiskey Road, the entrance to the building. How many trees will be removed, and we will follow the city's ordinance on tree removal. We've already done our tree survey, How many will be removed is, since we haven't got along that far, we will save as many as possible, because that is a requirement by the city. Annexation, I mean, they agreed annexation when it becomes contiguous, and they had some other questions in there. There is a 20-foot common area behind the homes that they talk about here. That is owned by the Property Owners Association, so it's not our property. We will be buffering per the city's requirements and counties. We're meeting both ordinances here, whichever is more stringent. Connection to their detention pond. That pond is actually owned by the city, Aiken County. It's in the, will we be connecting to it? If Mr. Berry with the engineering department there allows us to, we will be providing our own stormwater detention. It's always best to tie to an existing system so we don't have problems downstream, but that'll be up to Mr. Berry. The trees along the entrance roads, they're 20 foot. There's the magnolia trees along entrance. We're going to preserve as many where we can. The drainage problems, I mean, we will put on a stormwater retention, meet the cities, the county's code on the ordinance for that. The start time for construction is January 1 is when we're projecting to start this project, and it will take about a year to finish. Soil stability, I'll be responsible for handling that as far as my plans. And I think that the tree or the lighting, we will be doing a tree plan, lighting plan, and we will indirect lighting away from the building. The good thing about these developments, they do shut down at nighttime. You know, it's not commercialized as other sites are.
Do y'all intend to contact the homeowners association and respond to those questions?
I'd be happy to, but I couldn't find their phone number. That's the reason I tried, and I found their president. I couldn't find their phone number to call. I'll be happy to, though, and I'll get that to Mom. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down, petitions and requests number 2. This is a request from Parks and Recreation Department to place banners in the downtown for various events they sponsor. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, for council consideration tonight is permission to place banners in the downtown area promoting several city events listed below between October 12th and the end of 2018.
Comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to petitions and requests. Number 3, this is a resolution approving listing of projects to be sent to Aiken County for capital project sales tax 4 ballot. By title, a resolution authorizing the listing of projects to be funded from the capital project sales tax 4. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Waltz, thank you. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we've had several meetings since February the 19th to discuss city's projects for the capital project sales tax referendum. CPST 4. I do want to state very briefly that our city attorney, Gary Smith, has conferred with the county attorney, Jim Hawley, and in doing their research, they found that there was a court case, the state versus County of Florence in 2013, that was issued 6 months after the Attorney General's opinion. We reviewed in our first meeting back on February 19th, and essentially the Supreme Court is saying that we may include uncompleted projects from a previous capital project sales tax referendum, but this Capital Project Sales Tax Act does not require those uncompleted projects to be included. We have been working with a projection figure of $49 million provided by Aiken County. I was hoping today to get a firmer number and did not, but I've been told that that number could be 51.5 to 52 million that we would spend. We could have conceivably 4 projects. Capital Project Sales Tax 3, that collection will end April 30th, 2019. We will collect $34 to $36 million, just depending on how the rest of the quarterly payments come through, and we had $44,600,000 allocated. After careful consideration, and I guess a lot of comments and feedback from council, I think we've listed a number of projects for inclusion on the ballot. One thing also to keep in mind is while there is, ballot order does matter, this enabling legislation does allow entities to do multiple projects at one time. That is allowed by state law. That you set the priority, but you can also set forth the formula or a system by which multiple projects are funded simultaneously, which we've been doing, at least from my experience with Capital Project Sales Tax Round 2 and 3. In terms of the recommended order for projects, we've got listed, again, based on a number of meetings that we've had, and strategic planning sessions, et cetera, going back several years. I think council's made it clear that infrastructure should be something that we make a priority on this project, and I think staff our public works staff has done a good job identifying infrastructure projects, but also we've identified other projects as well, including some public safety vehicle fire apparatus replacement, as well as some worthy parks and recreation projects that are identified as well, including improvements to Smith Hazel, the Weeks Center, renovations to the Weeks Center, as well as some playground equipment replacement at 3 parks. For council consideration tonight is, I guess we've identified $49 million worth of projects for potential inclusion on the ballot. I guess one thing, since we don't have a firm number greater than 49 million at this time, we could tentatively pencil in maybe an additional 2.5 to 3 million, or if it's council's discretion, we could wait till we get that firm number and then add to it. In talking with the county, they've already appointed 3 members to the sales tax county board. We've appointed our representative. The county so their goal is to produce their list for the ballot for the capital sales tax committee to consider at their meeting in mid-April, and we've tried to stick to our goal and deadline to submit our projects by the end of March, and this is what we're doing tonight for council consideration, or the projects, and I would recommend in talking with council, we added this detail here for council, but I think it's the sense that we perhaps don't necessarily go into the detail that we've dashed here for a lot of these projects. I think it would be good to just list them as water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure with relevant dollar amounts, et cetera, for most of these projects, as we've done in prior ballots. But this comes, I guess, as a recommendation to council for consideration, and then we can certainly make adjustments based on the sense of council tonight, and then present this and the resolution to the county for their sales tax committee consideration and ultimate inclusion on the ballot November 6th.
All right. I think, Mr. Mayor, I think my motion should have been to approve them in the order as listed here, because we do have to prioritize them, given the fact that it really doesn't make much of a difference, because we have the flexibility to do it either way, but we've got to have some priority. And further, I would like to instruct our representative to not give the money to the small communities first, to equally disperse it, since we were shorted to CPST 3. They all got their money, and we are not getting all that we're entitled to in CPST 3. So if it's at all possible, he may get outvoted, but I'd like to see a collection spread out equally among all entities.
All right, sir. Who gave the second? I apologize. Who gave the second on that motion?
I have a second. No, I had a question. I didn't know we had.
Well, I want
a second first.
Would you agree with my added comments about the priority as it's listed here?
Well, I didn't know that we had done these in a priority.
Well, we haven't discussed it until now, but I think
there you go.
what we have to approve is the priority listing. As I say, we have flexibility, so it's not as important as it was for CPST 3.
The wording of the ballot will allow each entity to take, I mean, if not, you might be waiting for a easement on a project and you wouldn't be able to do the next 13, so it has that flexibility.
I don't think we set a priority at all. It's just a list, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but it's got to be a priority on the ballot.
Okay.
It's going to have to be items 1, 2, 3, or however many.
We haven't discussed that.
Okay, so you're talking about priority on the ballot.
Yes.
I don't want to muddy the water, but I mean, you'll have a listing of projects on the ballot. The ballot itself will say that city council reserves the right to modify the listing as council deems fit. So you'll have a listing of projects on the ballot when it goes to the entire county for the referendum. And there's language on the ballot that says this listing can come back to city council for amendment as council deems fit in the future.
Yeah. But in the first CPST 3 projects, they all listed them by number.
It did.
Yeah.
Very good. Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Pay close attention.
You'll be tested when you get home, though.
I'm Dr. Holly Waltz. I live at 524 York Street Southeast. I might be a little bit out of order here, but I would like to simply say I hope that you all will continue to look at these criteria and criticality of this money, because I see one on here that is considered to be included that I'd like you to speak a little bit more about, and that is the camera system, the citywide public safety camera system. To me, having gone through a lot of break-ins in my neighborhood recently, I know nothing about this, where it's going to be set up, but I think anything dealing with safety of our residents, safety of our property, hopefully should be given quite a bit of forethought and not just wiped off this huge list of millions and millions of dollars. $2 million right here sounds like a drop in the bucket. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. And also, I think there's a request for about $400,000 for cameras in this year's budget. Is that correct?
That's right. The upcoming budget, there is money earmarked for downtown cameras.
That's downtown, and the $2 million would be?
On major thoroughfares throughout the city.
Yeah. We asked that question, just because you asked for more background, we asked that question in work session, and we were told while it would not reduce necessarily the need for officers, obviously, or reduce that, it would help in particular with solving the crimes afterwards, and that certainly is important in the criteria. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, any comments, council? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution approving listing of projects to be sent to Aiken County for capital project sales tax 4 ballot? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And I would say if the number comes in higher than 49 million, which I suspect it might from the county, I do think that we should bring this back at our next meeting to fill that needed. It's better to have more projects listed than you collect than not enough projects to use money that you don't get to use. So.
Absolutely, I agree.
When we get that number, if we get it before the April 9th meeting, an additional on top of 49, we'll bring that to council to fill in that gap.
All right, very good. Our representative to that committee is here tonight, Mr. Ebner. So we appreciate him sitting through that.
He appreciates it being the last item on the agenda, I want you to know.
He did ask for it to be moved up, by the way. Under information, any issues and updates? I think just again, we want to say congratulations to our staff and congratulations to our city for the recognition of Southern Living. It really represents, I think, another item that we haven't talked about much, but another item we got recognized for was having friendly people. And I think was friendly people. I think we haven't said enough about that because frankly, I think that's really what makes us the best small town.
Friendliest small town.
There you go, friendliest small town. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Erdo, second. Councilman Waltz. All those in favor, please stand up. And thank you for being here tonight.
At halftime, I couldn't pay attention and got the final score.